take 3 out of 4 against the first place Dodgers, then turn around and drop a series to the last place Cardinals. Baseball remains a fickle beast, but the homer bashing Braves bounce back by, bashing a bunch of homers. They remain on track for home field advantage throughout the postseason as holders of the best record in baseball. The magic numbers down to 10 in individual marches toward history. They remain intact. The only question, as we welcome in you to another BPTV, I'm Cory McCartney, joined as always by Grant McAuley, is what kind of momentum the Braves are going to have in their corner come October. And Grant, the topic of momentum is an overarching theme with only weeks remaining in the regular season.
Yeah, it is. And there's a lot of different ways to look at it. That series against the Dodgers, I think, showed what the Braves are capable of against a team that was absolutely red hot and had as much momentum as you could possibly have rolling into that series. And then the Braves took 3 out of 4. And in the postseason, I've learned that even if it's a 5-game series, if you win the series, you don't have to play the rest of those games. So who knows how these things will play out. But there is that old adage that momentum is only as good as the next day's starting pitcher. The Braves have had some questions here in the month of August and into September about their starters from time to time, but it's calmed down a lot since that week or 10 days after the trade deadline. So we're going to find out in the next 3 weeks exactly what the Braves are able to put together as they look to polish off the National League East, hold on to that best record, and set themselves up in the way that they want to make that run through October.
Well, the Braves dropped 2 of 3 versus the cellar dweller Cardinals, as I mentioned, giving up more runs than I think anyone anticipated against an offense of that ilk. But the league's highest scoring offense still did its thing. They totaled 20 runs across the series, punctuated by 5 homers in the series finale. That included Ronald Acuna Jr. continuing his march to history with his 33rd and 34th homers. Matt Olson makes it an MLB leading 47 as he chases history of his own. I think if you're looking for a culprit in those losses, though, Grant, it was squarely on the Braves' arms. Spencer Strider, who we're going to get into more later, didn't make it out of the 3rd inning and yielding 6 runs. Michael Soroka, also a point of conversation later in this as we go on here, lasted 3 innings and giving up 5 runs. Colin McHugh was tagged for 4 runs as he came in relief of Soroka. Despite a rocky 2nd inning, Max Fried delivered a quality start in the series finale. But over those first 2 games, I mean, those are performances, Grant, that even this vaunted offense couldn't cover up.
Yeah, and the offense did its job. I mean, if you score 5, 6, 7 runs in a game, you feel like you got a good chance to win it. And the Braves offense was busy scoring, half a dozen runs in those losses. But yeah, I mean, Spencer Strider, that was one of those where it felt like a start where he just didn't have the feel, the command. He seemed out of sync. Maybe mechanically there was something going on. Clearly he was frustrated. Can't imagine he wouldn't be with the early results. I mean, you walk a batter, give up a homer. That is going to kind of change your mindset on how your day has begun. And you might be looking for the reset button, but in baseball, I've learned there is no reset button. So you just have to kind of push on. And that, I think, is what Spencer Strider touched on a lot in his post-game comments. Look, I've got to find ways to get through it when things aren't going my way. And I don't think it's, he's mentally, not tough enough, or that he's breaking down, or that he's simply, letting his emotions get the best of him completely. But he is a guy that I do think wears it a little bit on his sleeve because of the expectation that he has for himself to give his club a chance to win. He wants to be the guy that pitches 7 innings, 8 innings every single time out. It hasn't necessarily played out that way, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here, because Spencer Strider is having a really good season. He's a huge reason why the Braves are where they are. He's just not a finished product. This is his first year as a full-time major league starting pitcher. I think some people may forget that because we're so busy talking about the strikeout history and things that he can do. But yeah, to go back to the bigger picture, clearly the Soroka story we'll get into a little bit later, that's a disappointment. The 5th starter spot has been a big question mark for the Braves all season long. Maybe Kyle Wright answers that in a week or 10 days or whenever it is that he gets back after he's done with his minor league rehab starts. But I think the Braves starting pitching is better than it was in this series. I mean, see the Dodgers series for an example of how good they can be. They've just got to go out and close out this season in a way that has them lined up, and maybe a little bit of rest for some guys is going to be part of the equation for Brian Snitker, Alex Anthopoulos, and how they are kind of lining up going into October this year, because they're not having to chase down another club to win the division. They're in a place where a lot of teams would love to be sitting in the Braves catbird seat as they head towards the postseason.
Okay, so you dove a little bit further into Spencer Strider, so I want to continue this conversation. Last episode, we looked at, what needs to happen for him to claim the NL Cy Young, something no Braves player has done since Tom Glavine in 1998. The strikeouts that you mentioned, they're still coming. A 24-year-old now has an MLB best 250. He still has, at least mathematically, that shot at the first 300K campaign in franchise history in the modern era, with potentially 4 starts left for him. But a combined 10 runs over the last 2 games, 6 of those this this last time out against the Cardinals. The workload is now 30 and a third innings more than a year ago. You mentioned this. I think we do forget sometimes this is his first full season as a starter. He's faced 133 more batters. And against the Cardinals, his average fastball velocity of 96.8 was the lowest it's been in 15 starts. So read into that what you will. Brian Snitker said ahead of the finale against the Cardinals, the plan is to still use Strider during Monday's doubleheader against the Phillies, which would be normal rest for him. The Braves certainly have pitching depth and can create rest days. And yes, he's chasing history, chasing hardware. But Grant, how would you make any alterations? Should any alterations be considered in terms of rest as you get him ready for October and ready to dominate over that month?
I do think that there will be, but I don't necessarily feel like they have to do it right now. I think that getting Spencer Strider back out there, continuing to, make your march towards closing out at least the division before you really start thinking about making wholesale changes. And if they had guys who were coming along from the minor league level that were just maybe a little bit more, reliable, I guess would be the word. Because, you look at the guys that have had to be the Braves' fourth and fifth starters, and sometimes the third starter, depending on how you want to look at what Bryce Elder's season ended up being. But you don't necessarily get those innings. So when you do have a short start by Spencer Strider and a short start by Charlie Morton against the Dodgers, though it wasn't a bad one, he just wasn't as sharp as he had been prior to that. So how much stress can you afford to put on your bullpen by bringing in some unknown quantities that you can't really, count on? And Spencer Strider is better than a guy who's going to get chased in the third inning. I know it's happened a couple of times this year. I know that a lot of talk is being spent on the history that he could make, the strikeouts, the Cy Young. Spencer Strider, to his credit, he's not concentrating on any of that stuff at all. He's simply trying to go out there every fifth day and be the best that he can possibly be to help his team win a baseball game. And I think that kind of mindset's pretty refreshing. He really squashes all talk of all of those things relatively quickly, to the point where I don't think I'd really even bother asking him about it until the offseason or some other time, maybe as he's accepting an award, if it comes to that. And, as far as, fans wanting to see him win that, I still don't know that there's a runaway for the National League Cy Young. I think at this point, maybe Justin Steele has the inside track. I know people are making a case for Blake Snell. I don't know. You lead the league in ERA. I guess that's impressive. But if you also lead the league in walks, is that, something that cancels that out? I don't know. But there's some other guys. Zach Gallen's had a pretty good year, but we can do this on another episode. The bottom line is, I think for Spencer Strider, it is winning. And winning is the thing that he is most passionate about. Winning is a thing that the Braves have done far more than not when he's been on the mound. I think they have an 800-plus winning percentage. So he has not been a detriment to the Braves, even when he's had a handful of bad starts. By and large, he has certainly carried the weight in a rotation that has needed him to do that, and he has answered the call every fifth day. So that rest, maybe that comes in the final 8 to 10 days of the season. You just kind of skip that start and just give him that opportunity to reset a little bit, but also have the innings to where you feel fresh, because for the Braves, they're not going to go right into postseason play. There's going to be that little layover. And we saw last year how a little layover might affect some of the stronger teams going into the postseason, as opposed to the ones that immediately keep playing, because baseball is a bit of a daily sport.
Yeah, good call there with the built-in rest. I think that's an important thing to touch on. And I wasn't talking about the amount of batters he's faced and the amount of innings to say, look, Spencer Strider's wearing down. But I think the reality, it's been an off month when you think about the four seam, which he throws more than any other starter at nearly 59%. He had a 23% whiff rate against the Cardinals, and across his last 6 starts, he's not been better than 29%, that dipping as low as 9% during that stretch. If you go back to July, he was at 32% or better 4 times, including a high of 43% with the pitch over that month. So I think you couple that with a dip in velocity, and look, it's just a conversation worth having, especially when you didn't get the optimum version of Strider last October when he was dealing with the oblique injury. It may come down to just a simple question, and you mentioned it. What's more important? History and a Cy Young are getting him rested when it comes to the postseason in a really crucial time to have him on the mound.
Yeah, and I don't think there's really any question which one Spencer Strider is going to choose, and I think which one the Braves are going to choose. They're not trying to keep him from being able to get the milestones and do these things, but he's got a lot of years ahead of him. That's the hope, and that, I think, is the way you have to look at it and the way that you have to manage it going forward. He is somebody that's obviously a building block for this club. Given the extension that they signed him to, they plan on having him around for a while. And if he does the kinds of things that he's shown he can do over his rookie campaign and his sophomore season, there could be more of that ahead. And that's just kind of, I think Matt Olson uses this conversation a lot, or this point a lot. My success is a byproduct of the success of other guys and other things. And if it happens, great. If it doesn't, I'm not going up there trying to think about oh, I've got to be the guy that goes out and does X, Y, Z. For Olsen, it's, well, I've got to drive in all the runs as a cleanup hitter. He doesn't have to do that. For Spencer Strider, he doesn't have to go win a Cy Young for the Braves rotation to be a strong one because you got Max Fried, you got Charlie Morton. I think Bryce Elder's shown you a lot. And if you get Kyle Wright back in this mix, I was looking just down that line in the Braves clubhouse because they all sit in a line with one another. And I thought, there are a lot of other clubs that would love to have this starting five running out there. And that's to say nothing about the historic offense that they've got and a pretty solid bullpen as well. So a lot of things have lined up for the Braves that have them in one of the best positions that I can think about in any era of Braves baseball, at least in my lifetime.
Mentioned the struggles against the Cardinals. The Braves did rebound to take that series finale, something to build on with a 3-game series coming up against the Pirates. But I mean, let's state the obvious. The Braves did just drop a set against a team that's ahead of Pittsburgh in the National League Central standings. Bryce Elder going to get the start on Friday. Saturday and Sunday are currently listed as TBD of this recording, though. Charlie Morton, who has a 0.96 ERA with 36 strikeouts over his last 5 outings, would be on regular rest Saturday. Jared Schuster remains an option for a weekend start. The obvious difference between the Cardinals and Pirates is the Braves just faced a top 10 offense in the form of St. Louis. Now they get a bottom 5 in the Pirates. And this alone, Grant, this represents itself as a get-right series for Atlanta's arms.
It does. And, you know, if you're the Braves, you realize that the Pirates played you pretty tough up in Pittsburgh about a month ago. So I don't think they're going to be overlooking anybody. I don't buy into the narrative that the Braves play down to the competition. Look, baseball is a weird sport. You mentioned it right at the open of the show. You know, any team can beat any other team on a given night. And there are some teams that lose 80, 90, 100 games and still win some series throughout the course of 162 and sometimes against some good teams. I mean, for example, didn't the Pirates take the season series from the Dodgers last year? And the Dodgers won 111 games. I mean, weird stuff happens over the course of a baseball season. But for Atlanta, I think it's, you know, get the focus back on winning the day, winning another one, winning that series, and then moving on forward. And that has been, by and large, the mindset of this club ever since Brian Snitker took over. And I think that that's one of the things, that consistency, that approach, that everyday mentality that this team has that, you know, puts them in the position that they need to be. As far as how they're going to sort out the pitching, they do have some minor league options here. It does sound like, as we talked about with Spencer Strider, they're not looking to start skipping those starts for anybody just yet. And we'll see how they're able to sort all of that out. But the Braves offense is more than powerful enough to put the Braves in a position to win on any given night. They continue to make home run history. They now are second all-time for home runs in a single season in National League history. They're 9 behind the Los Angeles Dodgers for that mark. They're on pace for 314 home runs, I believe, which puts them ahead of the Minnesota Twins record of 2019. And the next 4 teams on this hit list, they were all 2019 totals. So the ball's a little bit different back then from what I heard. And this Braves club, they just continue to pulverize and hit home runs at a rate that we have not seen too many clubs in our lifetime or any other lifetime, to use that again, as far as a baseball team and the ability to set records just about on a given night.
And there could be a lot more against this Pirates team. The Braves scored 25 runs in 4 games against them in the beginning of August. They'll face a Pirates staff that still have the second most home runs per 9 since the All-Star break. So certainly could see a lot more homers from the Braves department coming through this series. By definition, given what Michael Soroka went through, even his getting back onto a major league mound in 2023 season after what happened to him in 2020 felt like a win. But the comeback did not have the storybook ending, at least not yet. The righty now out for the rest of the year, having a start against the Cardinals, ended with numbness in his fingers, diagnosed with forearm inflammation. Nothing structural, so at least a silver lining for all this, but a setback nonetheless. And Grant, I think you now have to wonder what's next for the former Rookie of the Year runner-up.
Yeah, you do. And it's really unfortunate because seeing him get back to the big leagues, I mean, that should have been one of those stories where, given all the buildup, where, you know, you just look back on that and you think, hey, what a great moment from that emotional perspective. And I know, you know, fans have a tendency to get emotional about stuff. And sometimes you just remember those games and those accomplishments as, you know, kind of the hallmarks of a particular season. But for Michael Soroka, it just never really clicked into place at the big league level. I kind of wondered what it would be like to allow him to have a start every 5th day for an extended period of time. But I think we saw that there were still some things that he was working through. Clearly, the numbness in his fingers would explain a lot about the start against the Cardinals because he had been pitching extremely well at the AAA level. And, you know, overall, to go through this season all the way into September without having to deal with any ailments, I was just hoping he would get through the whole year without having to talk about injury whatsoever. But fortunately, as you mentioned, no structural damage to the elbow. That's a plus. We'll see what some rest will do for him. And I don't know what the offseason has to hold for him as far as, what the Braves can expect to do if they don't have the options with him next year. Is he ready to assume a spot in the starting rotation? Do the Braves have a spot in the starting rotation? We don't know what their winter is going to look like. So it is going to be a big decision, but I know, and you know him as well. I mean, Michael Soroka is one of the stand-up guys, easy to root for, diligent, hardworking, caring, whatever. Pick a good adjective. It probably pertains to Michael Soroka. And I do hope that he finds that success, that consistency to continue his big league career, whether that's in a Braves uniform or somewhere else.
Yeah, he ends the year with a 6.4 OERA over 32 and a third inning. And I mean, you mentioned it, the future might now be in doubt. I mean, there's a likelihood he could be non-tendered. He'll be out of options next year. He can't be sent down without going through waivers. So it's just unfortunate that the results weren't there. Just one quality start in those handful of outings he had, that coming June 30th against the Marlins. And then you have to, I mean, is he willing to accept a minor league deal to remain with this organization? I think that's the question we're going to have to wait to find the answer to. But regardless, you mentioned it. Anyone who's been around Mike Soroka can not be pulling for him to get back in some way, shape, or form. It's now been 10 years since the Braves last retired a number, doing so with Chipper Jones in 2013. But as of Saturday, at least the facade at Truist Park will include another number, though technically it's already there, covered up for now. But Andruw Jones, number 25, going to join the other franchise legends on Saturday against the Pirates. Given the trajectory of his Hall of Fame support, this could be just the beginning of Andruw Jones getting his flowers. And we've done the career retrospectives in the past, making the case for Cooperstown. But as he gets this honor, let's talk moments. What stands out to you, Grant, as the top moments of Andruw Jones' career?
Well, I'm going to go with the easy one, which is the 2 home runs in the World Series at the age of 19, because I think that was the moment that Andruw Jones kind of let the baseball world know there's something special happening for this future center fielder for the Atlanta Braves. Then you fast forward to a decade's worth of Gold Gloves, and I can think of a couple of different things, different catches in particular, that I like to post on social media just about every year if I have the opportunity to. There's a catch he made, and I think it was 2002 against the Philadelphia Phillies that Harry Kalas is on the call for. And he's basically going into the gap, diving on concrete to save a bases-loaded double, drags it in, and Harry Kalas just in his very, gruff and gravelly voice just saying, good night. I mean, who's going to catch that? Who but Andruw Jones can do these things? And then my personal favorite with the great Bob Rathbun on the call back in the old Sports South days, he goes diving into the gap on the concrete at Olympic Stadium, basically coming out of frame to make a game-ending catch to preserve a shutout for Tom Glavine. Andruw just did things that defy logic. The jumps that he got, the reads that he got, the fact that I would imagine for Andruw, I mean, because he was great coming in on the ball, was also great going back, the Spider-Man catch, a great example of that. He had the rifle in center field for so long. I mean, nobody wanted to run on him. It was just a tour de force. I mean, he just put on a show in center field for the better part of a decade. So I don't know if a decade can count for a moment, but watching Andruw play center field, I think you might have taken it for granted by the time he was done. But everybody since, with maybe the exception of Michael Harris, you kind of miss Andruw Jones if you're a longtime Braves fan. And now I think you get a chance to reflect on some of the greatness of that. And it should be a pretty fun weekend to look back and think about the things that this guy did, which were some of the best that we've seen in what was a decade and a half of extremely great Braves baseball throughout the 90s. Andruw was at the forefront of that, and I'm glad he's finally getting his number retired.
Yeah, I love the moment with the catch in Montreal, and you see Tom Glavine just mouthing wow at the end of it. But I love the trial, error, and success of conquering Talus Hill in Houston, because he tries running down that deep fly from Jeff Bagwell, misses it, turns into an inside-the-park home run. Then in the very next pitch, Ken Caminiti sends another towards that monstrosity. He's running up the hill, makes the catch. I mean, understandably, just looks exhausted afterwards. But, this was Andruw Jones at his best, right? I mean, it was watching a guy that sometimes just made everything look so simple, and I think that was Andruw Jones' game without question. He made everything look so simple. And this weekend going to be a celebration for the Braves and for Andruw Jones, who, by the way, for Curaçao, he's going to be the first ever player across any MLB franchise from Curaçao to have his number retired. So a major moment for Andruw Jones and the people of Curaçao. As for the current Braves, the magic number for a 6th straight NL East title is down to 10, and we'll see if they can dwindle that down even further with a 3-game series against the Pirates and 4 versus the Phillies to follow. Don't forget, we've always got you covered here on BPTV, so be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications to get those alerts when we drop a new episode. Also, tell a friend. It won't you. It just helps us to keep this thing growing. Until next time, I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley, and we'll see you soon, Braves Country.